Haunted by a sinister secret, man's minor wound revealed to have terrifying, unexplained cause it was just a scrape. A small bite of wood from the old porch. Peter didn't think much of it at first. But as he sat on the cracked floorboards, the sun sinking behind the leaves, a chill crawled up his spine. Eldridge Hollow was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that felt suffocating. Laughter from children playing in the distance seemed to mask something darker. Peter's daughter, Emily, often spoke of escape, of wanting to leave the town behind. He kept pushing those thoughts away, focusing instead on the splintered wood beneath his fingers. Yet, the whispering wind felt unsettling, echoing stories of missing children that hung heavy in the air. With a quick scrape of his arm against the ragged edge of the board, he dismissed the sting. It wasn't just the wound that nagged at him, it was Emily's increasing distance. Nights grew unbearable. The scraping turned into a fevered nightmare. The first episode hit hard. He jolted awake, heart racing, drenched in sweat, shadowy figures flitting through his mind like ghosts. Why were they there? Tiny faces he had never seen before blanketed his thoughts. He brushed it off as stress, but as the days wound on, time slipped away, leaving him with fragments of dread. Every time he passed by the local school, the laughter rang too sweet, the children's joy tainted by a lingering echo he couldn't quite place. Mr. Lancaster, the principal with that forced smile, always seemed to have a watchful eye on the community. It made Peter uneasy. Was it just him? The flyers about missing children seemed to taunt him from the walls. He wondered what secrets they held. Emily picked up on it. The way his eyes darted, the cold sweats that broke out at dinner. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, concern shadowing her youthful face. All he could do was nod, avoiding her probing gaze. Then she got curious about Mrs. Winter, their neighbor with that sickly sweet smile, whose kindness felt too calculated. Emily, with her investigative spirit, began digging through the library's archives, searching for something nobody else seemed interested in finding. The townsfolk offered her vague responses, dismissing any connection to the tales of lost children. But she pressed on, her resolve only growing stronger. That night was the worst. Peter's fever broke through the ceiling. A relentless vision of folklore haunted him, twisting through his brain. Shadows whipped around, wrapped in a fog that seemed to pull him deeper into its web. He found himself in the woods behind the house, chasing echoes of laughter linked to the throbbing in his arm. Just as he thought he was close to the truth, the faces of innocents twisted into grotesque masks, mouths agape in silent screams. It was a reality too terrible to bear. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Dawn broke, Peter woke up again, heart pounding, driven by a need to uncover the truth before it swallowed them whole. Emily was slipping through the cracks of the reality he had taken for granted. What if trust, in this quaint neighborhood, led to a horror deeper than the murky roots of that oak tree outside? And the worst realization of all gripped him: what if his wound was not merely his own but a gateway to something far more sinister? Something hungry, intertwined with the very fabric of Eldridge Hollow. Peter couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air felt thicker with each passing moment, and dread loomed over him like the dark clouds that had gathered on the horizon. He clutched at his arm where the scrape had begun to darken, the skin looking almost alive, pulsing with a rhythm that was not his own. Was it infected, or was it something worse? With shaky hands, he grabbed Emily's journal from the coffee table, flipping through pages filled with innocent drawings and scribbled notes about her findings. She had begun charting out the history of Eldridge Hollow, but instead of ordinary tales of happy families and so-called friendly neighbors, there were hints of something far more grim, references to curses, disappearances, and forgotten graves hidden in the woods. "Dad, can we talk?" Emily's voice interrupted his thoughts, slipping into the room with an anxious edge. The shadows in her eyes mirrored his own fears. "Sure, Em. What's on your mind?" he managed to say, though the words felt heavy on his tongue. "I found something," she said, her excitement and fear flickering like candlelight. "It's about the children. They were taken, but not just disappeared, they were part of a ritual. There are mentions of a sacrifice." The word hung in the air, turning it cold. An unexplainable fear crept into Peter's chest. "What do you mean? A sacrifice? For what? Every town has dark stories." She shook her head, gripping the edge of the table as though it was the only thing keeping her from sliding into the abyss. "No, Dad, this is different. I don't think it was just stories. People were disappearing whenever the old moon rose above the oak in the square." "What does that have to do with us?" "No one's gone missing lately," he countered, trying to keep the unwanted panic at bay. Emily glanced out the window, and Peter could see that her expression twisted with something unsettling. "But it hasn't stopped." "Not really. Look at the old ones around us. They know more than they say, like Mr. Lancaster and Mrs. Winter. They watch. They're always watching." The air stormed between them, thickening the silence. Then, Peter thought he heard a soft whisper creeping through the window, the wind carrying faint giggles and a sinister undertone that twisted in his ear. He took a step back, his heart racing. "Did you hear that?" he asked, eyes darting toward the window. "Hear what?" Emily replied, frowning, her youthful innocence fighting against a growing dread. With a grating creak, the porch steps shifted, and Peter felt a chill race down his spine. Shadows outside danced along the trees, and beneath every flicker, he imagined there could be eyes watching him, 1,000 hidden witnesses wrapped in darkness. "Let us go outside," he said, his voice lacking conviction. Before they could step out, the door swung open wide, revealing the grinning figure of Mr. Lancaster, standing too straight, his smile unnaturally bright. "Peter. Emily. Just the people I wanted to see. Come. The moon is rising, and it's the perfect time for a little gathering." Peter felt his stomach drop. Was the principal inviting them into the very heart of the town's dread? The warmth of his facade turned to ice in Peter's veins. Something primal screamed for him to run. "Emily, we need to go," he whispered, but she stood frozen, eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Don't you want to know what he's going to say?" she breathed, barely above a whisper. That hesitation, that split second of uncertainty, wrapped itself around Peter's heart. What awaited them under the rising moon? He could hear the laughter again, and this time, it was louder. The kind of laughter that promised nothing good. "Emily," he warned, but it was already too late. As they stepped outside, the shadows twisted, and the laughter became a chant. The night air thickened, and he knew they were not alone. What had they just stumbled into? As the principal beckoned them forward, Peter's heart raced, the secrets of Eldridge Hollow ready to swallow them whole. Was there a way out? Or were they destined to join the whispers in the dark? The laughter exploded around them, a cacophony of voices, pulling at Peter's insides like a twisted puppet string. He felt Emily's small hand slip into his. Their fingers interlaced with silent anxiety, grounding him, even as chaos swirled around them. The glow of the moon peeked through the clouds, casting shadows that danced like wraiths on the ground. "This way," Mr. Lancaster urged, his voice smooth as oil, beckoning them towards the clearing near the oak tree. The people gathered under the pale moonlight, faces illuminated by a dim, flickering lantern. They were all there, the old and the young, familiar faces twisted into expressions of fervent anticipation. "What is this?" Peter asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just come, come." Lancaster grinned wider, excitement barely contained. "You'll see." As they approached, Peter could feel the heat of the crowd, the roiling energy of their collective eagerness. It was almost overwhelming. He struggled against the urge to turn and flee, to shield Emily from whatever fate lay before them. "Look!" Emily whispered, a tremor in her voice. She pointed toward the center of the clearing, where a crude pedestal stood beneath the gnarled branches of the oak. On it lay a single, weathered doll, a child's toy left to languish in the dirt, missing one eye and with a torn dress. "What's wrong with that doll?" Peter muttered, feeling the bile rise in his throat. "It's a marker," Emily said. "They were here. All of them." The ones who disappeared. The crowd hushed, their tension tightening like a noose. Each member stared at the doll, eyes glistening with a fervor that sent chills racing down Peter's spine. Lancaster stepped forward, arms wide as if welcoming an unseen force. "Tonight, we remember the lost ones. The moon is our witness." He turned to the villagers, their faces gaunt, veiled in shadows but alive with darkened joy. "This is our way. Our tradition." Peter clutched the journal tightly, Emily's drawings and notes echoing in his mind. A ritual? Feet shuffled, breathing heightened. He locked eyes with Emily, who trembled slightly. They were standing on the threshold of the unknown, a path paved in darkness that seemed ready to swallow them whole. The laughter began anew, rising like the wind. Creeping fingers of fog curled around them, wrapping Peter in a sensation that clawed at his sanity. Each chuckle felt individually malign, laced with a sense of foreboding and hunger. He knew then that they were not merely spectators, they were part of whatever insidious event was unfurling. "Dad," Emily's voice quavered, forcing him to concentrate. "What if they're—" But before she could finish, Mr. Lancaster raised his arms, and the crowd answered, their voices swelling, merging into a spine-chilling harmony. "We honor those who've walked among us. Their laughter, their joy, forever bound. They lead us, guide us." An inexplicable thrill coursed through Peter, chilling him to the bone, tying his heart to the anxious pulse of every villager gathered. He felt a darkness welling up inside him, and along his arm, the scrape throbbed like a heartbeat, urgent and insistent. Emily pulled away slightly. "What's happening? I don't like this." Then he realized the people's adoration was for the missing children. They weren't just here to remember. They were here to summon. "No!" he shouted, the panic igniting his muscles. His heart thundered, that primal scream urging him to push through the crowd, away from the center stage of madness. But the whispers wrapped around them, no escape. Faces turned towards him, their eyes wide, smiles stretching long and thin, crafted from shadows. They had been waiting, and now it seemed his blood would be the offering needed to complete their grim ceremony. "Let us go!" he shouted, panic spilling over, grabbing Emily's hand firmly. And just as they turned to flee, the moon broke free from its shroud, illuminating the scene in sickly white light. The laughter morphed into something warped and sinister, and Peter dared to glance back at the pedestal. The doll, now glistening eerily under the moon, was pointing right at him. What had awakened with the moonlight? He could feel their eyes, felt them burning with hunger, and a horrifying realization broke within him. The thought of being their next offering sent terror crashing into his veins. "Run!" he yelled, but as they bolted, the voices crescendoed, the chant transforming into a deafening roar, chasing them. What darkness ran beneath the depths of Eldridge Hollow? And was it too late to escape the truth hidden in the soil? Peter's heart raced as they fled through the darkness, the echoes of the chanting crowd ringing in his ears, sharp and dissonant as a cracked bell. Emily stumbled slightly, her grip tightening around his hand, but he couldn't stop to check on her. They had to escape from whatever madness was gripping the town. "Faster!" he urged, his voice hoarse, breathless. The moon blared overhead, like a spotlight on their desperate struggle. Behind them, the laughter twirled and twisted in the night air, echoing off the trees. It felt alive, menacing, as if it were mocking their flight. "Dad, where do we go?" Emily whimpered, glancing back, her eyes wide with fear. Anywhere but here, he growled, glancing over his shoulder just in time to see the crowd begin to slink out of the clearing, moving as one grotesque mass. The shadows seemed to stretch towards them, fingers reaching, clawing for their flesh. "Why aren't they stopping?" she gasped, her voice shaking. "I don't know," he shouted. Hope was fading, an ember snuffed out by the chill of reality. They rounded a bend in the path, the trees squeezing together, making the way feel narrower with every second. Peter could almost feel the cold breath of the villagers on the back of his neck. Then, he heard it. A faint rustle, like whispers of the damned creeping through the underbrush. Peter's eyes darted, desperately scanning the trees lining the path. Shadows flickered, contorting as if alive, and the ground beneath them felt unsteady, shifting with every hurried step. "Keep moving," he urged, shoving Emily ahead of him. Suddenly, the rustling stopped. An unsettling silence fell, heavy as lead. Peter shot a look over his shoulder, every instinct screaming at him to run faster. The woods stood still, the air thick and oppressive. "Do you hear that?" Emily asked, breathless. "Hear what?" he snapped, trying to keep his fear at bay. There had to be a way out, there had to be. Then it hit him. A creeping dread. Stop. They froze. The only sound was their ragged breaths. "Peter, what's wrong?" Emily whispered. I don't think we should move just yet," he said, scanning the darkness. That's when he heard it, a soft, sinister giggle floating on the breeze. It was so familiar. "Emily, we need to go now." He turned, pulling her along, desperation surging inside him. But before they could resume their frantic race, something caught Peter's eye. There, on the ground, illuminated by the moon, was another doll, a twin to the one they had left behind at the clearing. This one was covered in dirt and leaves, its face obscured, but it seemed to be staring directly at him. "Dad, don't!" Emily cried, tugging at his arm. He hesitated. "That doll, it felt important. Don't you feel it?" Peter breathed, stepping closer, drawn by an inexplicable force. The air felt electric, crackling around him as he approached the doll. He knelt down, the dirt moist and cold against his fingers, and lifted it gently, willing himself to understand its connection. The laughter erupted again, sharper this time, emerging from the shadows that surrounded them. It seemed to echo from within the doll itself, swirling like a tempest. His heart raced as he felt something shift, a pull, as if the doll longed to be held, as if it tugged at his very soul. "Let it go. Please," Emily begged, panic rising. But the doll was in his grasp now. A sickening warmth spread from his palm to his arm, overwhelming his senses. The whispers grew louder, choruses of childhood songs and taunts cascading through the trees. With every heartbeat, he felt something dark seeping into him. He could feel it, a whisper promising secrets long buried, a truth that clawed at him with long-forgotten pain. "Dad!" Emily screamed, and the world exploded into chaos. In a blinding flash of realization, Peter sensed that the doll and those who vanished were intertwined with him, bound by something he might never fully understand. As he ripped himself away from the grip of that cursed object, something shifted in the air, and with it came a chilling stillness. Within that silence, Peter caught a glimpse of the village beyond the trees, shadows lurking by the houses, and the sinister chorus slowly receding. "What have I done?" he whispered, now aware that they were not merely fleeing but walking toward an inescapable truth. And he knew, deep down, whatever they had awakened was just beginning. "Where do we go now?" Emily whispered, trembling. He stood there, the deafening echo of that laughter still fresh in his mind, knowing one thing for sure, there was no escaping the darkness. What awaited them at the edge of the woods? And were they truly ready to uncover the secrets hidden within the very earth they stood on? The ground shivered beneath them. Peter's fingers trembled as he dropped the doll back onto the earth, a dismissal that felt like severing a lifeline. The laughter had dimmed, but the shadows were still there, an ever-present dread that loomed, waiting to reclaim its stolen prize. "Dad, what just happened?" Emily whispered, her voice quivering like a frail candle flame. Peter turned to her, his mind racing, struggling to put words to the chaos that racked his senses. "I don't know, Em. But we can't stay here. We need to keep moving." He grabbed her hand, and they plunged deeper into the woods, the path tangling around them like a serpent, whispering warnings in hushed tones. Every few steps, Peter glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the villagers materializing from the trees, their eyes reflecting moonlight like hungry wolves. The laughter returned, simpler now, echoing in childlike tones that sent shivers spiraling down his spine. It sounded as if the woods themselves were taunting him, dancing in the knowledge of a dreadful secret he was yet to uncover. "Dad, can't we just go home?" Emily's voice cracked, fear leaking through her tight grip. "No," he said firmly, though uncertainty gnawed at him. "We can't go back there. We have to get away from them." The trees grew denser, their gnarled branches reaching down like skeletal fingers. Each rustle felt like a warning, each snap of a twig underfoot amplified into a staccato drumbeat of dread. Suddenly, the path opened up, revealing a clearing lit by the pale glow of the moon. In the center stood an ancient stone well, overgrown with moss. It seemed out of place, untouched by the darkness that swirled around them. As Peter approached it, he felt the air thicken, as if the world held its breath. A sensation like icy nails crept up his spine. "Stay here, Em," he said, afraid of what he might find. He peered into the depths of the well, darkness swirling like a storm, promising answers or perhaps more horrors. But there were no answers to find, only shadows. Something flickered within the abyss, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched from the depths below. "Peter!" Emily yelped, pulling him back. "What?" He snapped, irritation creeping in with the fear. "Look!" She pointed toward the edge of the clearing, where a figure moved at the outskirts, barely visible. It was hunched, dressed in rags that blended into the night, its head bowed low. "Who are you?" Peter called out, his heart quickening. The figure slowly raised its head, revealing a face streaked with dirt, wide eyes glimmering under the moonlight. With a raspy whisper, it beckoned them closer. "Secrets, you seek secrets, don't you? Stay back!" Peter shouted, his protective instincts flaring. Emily shivered beside him, her eyes darting. Everyone's questioning, wanting to know, but no one wants to pay the toll. The figure's voice was unsettling, each syllable coating the air with an unshakable chill. "You've awakened something you cannot control. Whatever you're selling, we're not interested." Peter barked, irritation turning to fear. The weight of ominous words hung thick, wrapping around him like a snakeskin. But it only made the figure smile, a chilling grin that conveyed both sorrow and malice. "You've already paid." Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the woods, then more like distant drums beating in time with Peter's racing heart. The laughter crescendoed around them, the villagers moving closer, their chilling chants intertwining with the haunting rhythm of the drums. "Run!" Peter yelled, pulling Emily away. But the ground trembled, the well's stone edge cracked, and the shadows surged forward, absorbing the light, closing in. What had they awakened? A thundering roar erupted from the depths of the well, filling the night with fury and fear. "Dad, I can't!" Emily screamed, as the shadows crept forward, wrapping cold fingers around her legs. Despair clawed at Peter's throat. He grasped Emily's arm, feeling the dark energy pushing against them. "I won't let go. We can't stay here." Which way would they run? The clearing now felt like a trap, and the village loomed like a nightmare refusing to release its hold. What lay buried beneath the earth? Did that offer salvation or doom them even further? Time was slipping Peter. "Please." Emily's voice was a haunting echo in the growing shadows. He knew they were running out of time. But then he remembered the doll. The sinister laughter. What if? He muttered, real terror dawning. Could the answers they weren't seeking find them first? And at what cost? Just then, a bright light burst from the well, illuminating the darkness, a promise or a warning. He could either face the void of the well or risk the gathering shadows. What choice lay before them now? The light exploded from the well, casting eerie shadows that danced across the clearing. It illuminated the twisted faces of the villagers lurking at the edges, their mouths moving in sync with the unsettling rhythms echoing in the forest. A freezing wind swirled around Peter and Emily as the laughter dissolved into chilling silence. "Dad, I don't like this." Emily trembled, her grip tightening on his hand. "I know, just hold on," Peter whispered hoarsely, his heart thundering. He could feel the darkness pressing in, the shadows crawling like spiders hungry for their prey. The luminescence from the well began to flicker, revealing more shapes, twisted branches that resembled gnarled arms, creeping figures barely concealed by the trees. What were they waiting for? The urge to flee tore within him like wild gusts of wind. But sunlight seemed to beckon from the depths of the well, a siren call promising answers. I have to see," he muttered, stepping forward, the ground beneath him pulsing ominously. Each step felt like a challenge, daring him to turn back. "No. Stay away," Emily cried, her voice a ribbon of panic. He glanced back at her, her face pale with fear, wide eyes reflecting the purple haze that swirled above. "I have to find out what's going on." "Maybe there's a way out," Peter argued, though doubt gnawed at him. With a shuddering breath, he leaned over the edge of the well. The light expanded, revealing swirling shapes that glimmered like fish in murky waters. Shapes shifted, formed faces, screaming silently, people from the village. "What is it?" Emily whispered, her voice small. "What do you see?" "Nothing, just shadows and something else." Peter's voice faltered. He felt as though the darkness was sucking the strength right out of him, each flicker of light pulling at a deep-rooted fear. He needed to turn away. But he couldn't. A memory surged through his mind, the doll, the echoes of laughter. What had he awakened? Panic surged, and he stumbled back, eyes wide in realization. Was this all his fault? The villagers surged closer, their rhythmic chanting rising once more, a symphony of dread that wrapped around Peter like barbed wire. "You've awakened our curse," one voice shrieked, echoing from the depths of the well. "Run. Please," Emily begged, her wide eyes gleaming with tears. Peter grabbed her hand, the sound of their pounding hearts drowning out the chants. They backed away, but the villagers stepped forward, their bared teeth glistening in the faint light. The edges of the clearing began to shift, blurring together as if the forest itself was coming alive. Then, the ground quaked, unleashing a rumble that reverberated through his bones. "What is that?" Emily cried, her voice shrill as the trees creaked and swayed. "I don't know. Just keep moving," he yelled, adrenaline coursing through him. They sprinted toward the trees, branches snapping and scratching skin like greedy hands reached out to claim them. But the shadows followed, inescapable and relentless. "Peter, the well, it's glowing again," Emily shouted, her voice slicing through his concentration. He turned, light poured out in waves, casting the villagers' faces in a sickly glow. "Stop!" Peter shouted back into the darkness, desperate to stave off dread, uncertain about where he was leading them. But even as he did, a part of him yearned to dive back into that well, to see what secret simmered below the surface. "Run!" His voice rang out, but his feet faltered. The ground split open, revealing a chasm that pulsed with light and shadow. "Which way?" Emily screamed, terror rising in her chest. Peter felt torn. One wrong move could lead to salvation or doom. Was there any hope left? And just then, from the depths of the well, a whisper broke the air, chilling his very core. "You've chosen, but can you survive?" The shadows surged forth, closing in like a tidal wave, and Peter knew they were running out of time. As the light dimmed, he could feel Emily's grip faltering. "Peter, please. Everything hinged on a choice he was too terrified to make. Would they dive into darkness or fight against the shadows that closed in on them? He started, but the words evaporated, the air thick with impending doom. Then everything went white. Light flooded Peter's vision, blinding and sharp, suffocating him with its intensity. He gasped, instinctively pulling Emily closer. They were no longer in the clearing, the world around them pulsated with an otherworldly glow. The trees turned to whispers, their trunks twisting as if they were alive, breathing alongside the wind that carried a bitter scent of decay. "Where are we?" Emily asked, her voice shaky, echoing off walls that weren't there. "What happened?" We fell." Peter stammered, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. The shadows, a wavering menace, lingered at the edges of his mind, threatening to pull him back. Ahead stood another well, similar but different, the stone overgrown with moss and creeping vines. It glimmered as if infused with the same cursed light, beckoning them. "We need to go," he urged, but his voice didn't sound like his own. It trembled as dread seeped through him, drenching him in cold sweat. As they approached, the well exuded a low hum, vibrating through the ground and into their bones. It felt alive, thrumming with hidden power. The air thickened with the weight of anticipation and something darker, a sadness that wrapped around Peter's heart. "Peter," Emily whispered, her eyes wide with fear, "do you hear that?" He strained, listening. Yes, there it was, voices rising, overlapping, lamenting in a desperate chorus. Ancient and mournful, they clawed at his sanity. "We should go back," he urged, but his legs felt rooted, as if the shadows had taken hold of him. "Please, let us go," came Emily again, her voice shrill as she tugged at him, but he stood transfixed. The light shifted, revealing glimpses of faces swirling within the depths, twisted visages contorted in agony, mouths wailing in silence. That was when he saw it. A figure emerged beside the well, cloaked in darkness. It lurched forward, its form unsettlingly human yet grotesque. "You must listen," it rasped, voice like glass grinding together, echoing the pain of the lost souls. "You've only begun to understand." What are you?" Peter shouted. Panic rippled through him. He instinctively moved closer to Emily, shielding her. The creature took a step closer, a shrouded hand raised. "You awoke the curse. You inherit their sins." It croaked, and surreal clarity settled on Peter. Memories swept through the air like fog, whispers of laughter intermingling with his own childhood echoes. "No. I didn't mean to," he stammered, feeling the weight of blame settle on his chest like a stone. The figure tilted its head, shadows peeling from its features, revealing a gaping maw filled not just with teeth, but pieces of the lost. "They will claim you, they will claim her." Peter's heart thundered. "No. Not Emily." His grip tightened around her hand, desperate to pull her away from this nightmare. But the shadows surged, wrapping around their feet, thick and viscous like ink. For every step they tried to take away, the darkness dragged them back. "Only those who see the truth can escape," the creature whispered, its voice rising and falling, as if it were breathing dry leaves. "But truth can be a bitter poison." "Peter, what do we do?" Emily cried, her voice cracking as the shadows crept closer, a creeping tide rising against their bodies. He swallowed hard, heart racing as he glanced back at the well. The figures within pulsed with light, then darkened, creating a rhythm like a heartbeat amid the terror surrounding them. Peter took a deep breath. They had to make a choice, one that carried a burden neither of them was ready to face. Then that raspy voice echoed again, louder, "The answer lies within. Will you dare to dive into the unknown?" The shadows surged, drawn by the call of the ancient well, and Peter felt the ground shift beneath him. Suddenly, a more deafening silence fell, only broken by the frantic thudding of their hearts. What decision now loomed above them like a guillotine, ready to drop? Would they face their fears and seek the truth, or would they forever be bound by what they had unwittingly awakened? With a final glance, Peter rallied himself and took one step forward into the light, and then everything went dark again. Peter jolted awake, gasping for breath. He was lying on damp earth, his body heavy as if it were anchored by unseen weights. The air was thick and had a rancid odor, like rotting wood. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding. "Emily!" he shouted, the name echoing into the gloom. "Peter!" Her voice threaded through the darkness, tremulous yet searching. He could barely see her shape, a shadow against deeper shadows, as panic climbed in his throat. "I'm here." They stumbled toward each other, fingers fumbling in the murky air until contact was made. Relief washed over him, she was real. Her warmth grounded him against the encroaching terror. But their surroundings, the oppressive silence, the dampness melding with whispers of despair, told them they were not safe. "Where are we?" she breathed, clutching his arm, her fingertips digging in. "I don't know," he replied, scanning the darkness, feeling eyes upon them, though he saw nothing. The ground beneath them began to tremble, soft and undulating like the very heart of the earth was alive. They exchanged fearful glances as the whispers crescendoed, growing clearer yet more menacing, a cacophony of sorrowful moans. "Are they calling for us?" Emily asked, eyes widening. "They can't be," Peter muttered, though doubt churned in his stomach. "Maybe it's a trick." But the urge to listen was insatiable. Straining his ears, he discerned individual words woven into the murmurs, names, cries, demands for vengeance. Each syllable felt like fingernails scratching on the inside of his mind. "Peter," Emily implored, her breath hitching, "we have to get out of here." Then the well reappeared, twisted and big, standing defiantly in the gloom. It was darker than before, its surface rippling as though a storm brewed beneath. Peter's stomach twisted. The creature from before lurked, its silhouette swaying fractionally with the shadows. Dive into the well, find your truth," it chanted, voice a haunting melody. The enriched heaviness of its words seeped into Peter's marrow, awakening fears he thought long buried. Before he could stop her, Emily took a tentative step forward. "No. Stay back!" he shouted, fear spiraling. He seized her hand, pulling her back, but the shadows intensified, stretching and clawing at their ankles, desperately trying to separate them. "Peter! We must get out!" Her voice sharpened, threads of panic tightening around them. Then, a soft light flared within the well's depths, illuminating faces again, faces twisted in anguish, sorrowful eyes pleading. Pain-filled mouths opened in silent screams. The sight struck Peter. It was more than fear, it was a call to confront the depths of grief, of choices made and consequences carved into the essence of their beings. "Get away from it!" he shouted, retreating, pulling Emily with him, but the darkness surged forward, anchoring them in place. "We have to run." "Run where?" Emily cried, her voice a cracked whisper. The well's pulse quickened as if it were alive, offering gifts wrapped in a wrapping of terror. Peter remembered the creature's words, "Only those who see the truth can escape." What truth? What was he meant to see? "Peter, listen." Emily's grip tightened, desperation rising in her voice. "We have to make a choice." He felt the temperature drop, and suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind, a childhood lament, his own whispers mixing with those screams, tangled like vines strangling his soul. He didn't just resonate with their pain, he was tied to it, forever entwined. "Maybe we need to confront it," he murmured, chest tight. "No!" Emily shouted, pulling intensely against the shadows, trying to flee what haunted them. "This isn't a game." But that was it, wasn't it better to face the truth? Tormented, Peter met Emily's pleading eyes. Did they dare to unearth the horrors that lurked beneath the surface? The shadows shrank, as if sensing their indecision. The well pulsed again, an intoxicating breath of light streaming forth. "Dare it," hissed. And just like that, an overwhelming fear swept over him, pushing him toward the edge of the abyss. Was this the choice that would either save them or consume them whole. Peter, Emily whispered, her voice cracking. They stood at a threshold, backs against the shadows, the unknown loomed ahead. Now, the moment hung heavy. Was he ready to take that step into the depths? Time was slipping like grains of sand, and he felt its weight crushing down. But as he turned toward the light, something deep inside whispered a reminder of the remorse that awaited. What horrors awaited him if he took the plunge? What truths lived at the bottom of that well? Do we dare? He murmured, eyes locked onto the shimmering depths, and they both knew the answer lay just beneath the surface. Peter's heart hammered in his chest, echoing loudly in the stillness. Each beat felt like a countdown, urging him to make a decision. The light from the well beckoned with a deceptive warmth, illuminating more than just the faces of the damned. It revealed fragments of his own past. Think, Peter, think, he murmured under his breath, fingers coiled tightly around Emily's wrist. Memories swirled chaotically, long-buried secrets rattled in the chambers of his mind, begging to be unearthed. What had he done that could bind them to this horror? Peter, please. Emily urged, tugging him back. This is madness. Her face shimmered with fear, the glow deepening the shadows beneath her eyes. Suddenly, the edges of the well shimmered and contorted, grotesque figures whispering truths close enough to scrape against his skin. Your choice, your truth, they hissed in unison, voices a harrowing symphony that crashed against his resolve. What if he barely whispered the thought? What if facing it is the only way to break free? The moment hung thick, like the air before a storm. He locked eyes with Emily, searching for an answer, but all he saw was terror reflected back at him. Then, as if by some unseen force, the whispers grew louder. It felt like they were tearing at him from the inside out, unraveling his sanity. Without another thought, he stepped forward, driven by a force greater than fear and need to unearth the haunting. I have to find out, he said, and in a flash, he loosed Emily's grip. Peter. No. Her voice shattered the tension, but he was already crossing the threshold. The moment his foot touched the edge of the well, the world exploded in an avalanche of noise, screams mingling with the shadows, drowning him in an ocean of despair. He stumbled, falling into the depths headfirst. The chill of the well enveloped him, pulling him down, the darkness wrapping around him tighter than a vice. Panic clawed at his lungs as he descended, and the light above shrank to a pinprick. All around him, endless silhouettes swirled, taunting him with their tormented wails. Face your sins. The shadows screamed, each word striking like lightning. You cannot escape. Then he hit the water, icy fingers plunging into his chest. It enveloped him wholly, pulling him into its murky depths where clarity seemed impossible. As he gasped for air, confusion and dread coiled in his belly. Frigid water filled his mouth, tainted by desperation, a taste of failure. Suddenly, he felt something cold and slimy brush against him. He jerked back, but the sensation clung, wrapping around his ankles like a creeping vine. Hot panic surged. Had he truly thought he could confront whatever darkness lay beneath? Emily! He screamed, realization hitting harder than the cold water. Memories surged as if the depths were alive, forcing him to relive every regret. His past rose like a haunting specter, accusing him. Strangled cries, harsh words thrown in anger, broken promises, each one a stone tethering him to this grim reality. Just then, he saw Emily's face appear above him, distortion in the shimmering light against the backdrop of black. Her eyes were wide, filled with unshed tears, as she reached toward him. An invisible thread of hope flickered between them, but it shimmered precariously, on the brink of severing. Hold on, Peter. She cried, fear thickening her voice. I want to let you go. As he struggled against the weight of the cold grip tightening around his legs, the world shifted. Suddenly, the well pulsed with a dark frequency, vibrating through the water. Screams grew louder, and the faces from before began to rise and fall before him, a chorus of misery. Face your truth before it consumes you. The word struck him hard, resonating with a truth he couldn't evade. Did he dare confront it? Or would he let it drag him down, taking Emily with him. The water tightened its vice, the shadows clawing at his being, intent on forcing him to surrender. "Peter, don't let go." Emily's pleas reached him through the chaos, and in that moment, everything he had feared coalesced in his mind a truth. Too terrible to comprehend. What if the truth of their nightmare was tied to him in ways he had yet to understand? What if he had been the architect of their suffering all along? As the shadows surged, he felt an all-consuming dread eclipsing his every thought. Would he succumb to his fate, or fight against the dark tide of torment? "Peter!" Emily screamed again, and as he felt himself slipping, one horrifying question pierced through: could the past be buried, or did it always come back to claim the living? And just as he felt himself sinking deeper into darkness, forgetting who he was, he clung to one last thought: was the well truly the only way to find freedom? The last twist of darkness swallowed him as he plunged deeper. Would he discover the truth, or was he destined to drown in his own sins forever? Peter's world faded from murky depths to agonizing clarity. He gasped, the realization cutting through the water he was losing Emily. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, he kicked against the oppressive weight surrounding him, fighting against the cold tendrils that seemed to latch onto every ounce of strength he had left. "Emily!" He roared, his voice swallowed by the waves, but desperation fueled him. Each stroke propelled him upward, not just for air, but toward the truth he had long evaded. As he broke the surface with a splutter, he yanked himself out of the shadows. The world around him shimmered like a mirage, blurring into chaotic waves of the past, a maelstrom of regret, of choices that had led him here. He saw her face reflected in the well's depth, a flickering light of hope amidst the chaos. "Hold on!" she cried, her voice resonating through the haunting echoes. "Don't stop!" The shadows writhed around him, their whispers clawing at his psyche. "You can't escape your sins!" they chanted in a rising crescendo, drowning him in guilt. But somewhere beneath the fear, a spark ignited. He wouldn't let them take Emily, he wouldn't let them win. "Enough!" he bellowed, rage breaking free from the shackles of despair. Hands clawing upward, he propelled himself from the darkness, shaking off the slippery grasp of the shadows with furious determination. "I will not be your offering," he declared, each word piercing the air with defiance. The water shrieked, recoiling in response to his fury, but he pressed on. The chill of the well kissed his skin, wrapping tighter around him, but Peter's resolve solidified. With one last powerful stroke, he surged upward, breaking the surface, gasping for breath. Light washed over him as he grabbed the edge of the well, clawing his way out of despair, pulling himself back toward life and Emily's frantic, tear-stained face. "Peter!" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with relief and fear. Without hesitation, he extended a hand, pulling her close. Their connection was electric, grounding, anchoring them both to the present. "I'm here, Em. I'm not going anywhere," he panted, heart racing. They stumbled away from the well, feeling the shadows retch behind them, their wails fading like echoes in the night. The villagers surrounded them, faces twisted not in joy but in rage, their voices crawling over each other like serpents. But Peter held Emily's hand tightly, determined to shield her from the malevolence they had awakened. "Remember the stories, the lives taken?" he shouted back at the villagers, as their forms loomed over them. "We won't pay your price." Suddenly, the air thickened, warping like a ripple in water. Faces glimmered, lost souls crying for justice, not vengeance. "You will never escape the truth," the crowd intoned, but now it felt different. Peter met their eyes, every anguished glare igniting a simmering rage of rebellion within him. "Not if we face it together." He stood firm, facing the restless spirits, void of fear. "You don't control us," he thought, the realization burning bright. "Your pain binds us all, but I won't let it control Emily and me." With each declaration, the shadows dissipated, recoiling from the inner fire he ignited. Clarity surged, a collective understanding taking hold. The stakes had transformed, those trapped were not enemies, but broken souls yearning to be healed. "Emily, look!" Peter pointed to the villagers, noticing their faces started to soften, a flicker of compassion dimming their fury. "Together we can find peace," Peter urged, his voice growing stronger. "Help us bring their stories to light. You live on in their memory, but we can break this cycle." Time hung in the balance, a fragile thread of hope spun into existence. The tension between Peter and the villagers shifted, murmurs turning into acceptance. The laughter turned from malicious to a reflection of joy as the shadows retreated, revealing their true selves, once innocent, charming, now realized beneath a layer of pain. "What have we done?" a villager murmured, remorse flickering through their gaze. "Release us from these chains," Emily cried, pushing forward, courage unfurling like a banner of change. "Together we can rewrite history. We will not forget, but we must heal." As they spoke, the shadows receded further, retreating back into the roots of Eldridge Hollow. Peace washed over them in waves as the villagers began chilling fades into light, listening to the empowering beats of love, acceptance, and understanding. Then, it struck Peter like a bolt: the true power of forgiveness could break this curse. The villagers were lost, perhaps seeking redemption even from those who had wronged them. "Let us remember the joy they brought to this town, the laughter we can share. Help us make a different story unfold," he declared, hope wrapping around his words. And as the moon cast warm light over them, everything shifted. The dwelling darkness melted into the shimmering colors around Eldridge Hollow. The villagers began to speak of fond memories instead of sorrow, releasing what had fed their anger and fear. Peter and Emily stood together, breathing in the promise of a new beginning. The darkness that had gripped Eldridge Hollow fled, replaced by the hum of life, the laughter of warm memories blending in the air, sealing a pact for healing among them all. Together, they whispered, hand in hand, inching toward the future. And as the community began to rise, a new dawn breaking over Eldridge Hollow, a sense of closure enveloped them. They had not only broken a curse, but also forged connections to one another. The legacy of the past had shifted, it had transformed into a bridge of understanding, where fear once ruled. They built their futures, one step at a time, rooted in compassion. "Let us go home," Peter said to Emily, his heart swelling with love as they walked away from the remnants of shadows, ready to conquer the light ahead. "Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Don't wait even one more second. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. You don't want to miss out on chatting about it. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how important it is to support the channel through these actions.